From the moment the morning bell echoed through Meadow High, the halls buzzed with a strange mix of curiosity and chaos, because the school was getting a new homeroom teacher, a woman whose name none of the students recognized, Ms. Elara Hayes, a calm and sharp-eyed educator with a quiet strength she didn't feel the need to advertise. And as she walked down the corridor holding her attendance folder with an elegance that made her look out of place in the noisy teenage battlefield, she had no idea that her very first day would turn into a storm she would later be remembered for, a storm that would expose not only the cruelty hidden in certain students but also the fire she had spent years training to keep under control. The moment she stepped into Class 11A, whispers erupted like sparks in a dry forest, the boys in the back smirking, the girls raising eyebrows, and right at the center of the room sat the self-appointed kings of the school, Brett Dalton and his gang of varsity jacket bullies, boys who were used to getting away with absolutely anything because their parents' money and influence turned every crime into a teenage mistake. And as Miss Hayes placed her bag on the desk with a polite, "Good morning," Brett leaned back in his chair with a grin that made it clear he had already decided she would be his entertainment for the day. She kept her voice steady and warm as she called roll, refusing to let the whispers distract her, but the class only grew louder, mocking her calmness, imitating her voice, and throwing paper balls when they thought she wasn't looking, and though she ignored it all with a confident grace, she could feel the tension building like a coil ready to snap. When she reached Brett's name on the list, he didn't answer. Instead, he stood up slowly, swaggering toward her desk as the room filled with anticipation, and he stopped right in front of her with an arrogant smirk, tapping her attendance sheet with a finger as if mocking authority itself. Elara kept her posture calm and simply repeated, "Present," but Brett only laughed and grabbed the collar of her neatly ironed shirt as the class gasped, waiting for a reaction, yet she didn't flinch, and this only seemed to irritate him more. His friends were already recording, cheering him on, convinced that humiliating a teacher would make them legends, and in one impulsive move meant to impress his audience, Brett tugged hard, tearing the seam of her shirt at the shoulder with a loud rip that silenced the entire classroom. For a moment, everything froze, students staring with wide eyes, phones capturing every second, and Ms. Hayes standing still, not embarrassed, not afraid, but terrifyingly calm, a calm that made Brett's smirk falter. He expected her to scream, to cry, to run out in shame, but instead she gently fixed the torn fabric with one hand, looked him straight in the eyes, and said in the softest yet most chilling voice the class had ever heard, "Are you done?" The air shifted instantly, everyone felt it, a change like storm clouds gathering, and Brett, desperate to save his pride, scoffed loudly and shoved her shoulder as if trying to provoke a reaction, but before he could blink, Miss Hayes moved, not wildly, not angrily, but with the precision of someone trained, someone disciplined, someone dangerous. She grabbed his wrist, twisted it safely yet firmly, and in one fluid motion had him pinned face down on his own desk without causing harm, controlling his movement effortlessly as the class erupted into stunned gasps, and Brett, who moments earlier had been the loudest in the room, was now trembling, unable to break free from her controlled hold. She released him just as swiftly, letting him stumble back in shock, and without raising her voice, she ordered all phones to be placed on her desk within 10 seconds, giving a stare so powerful it erased every thought of rebellion. The entire class scrambled forward, dropping their phones like frightened children facing an unbreakable force. Ms. Hayes then calmly addressed the room, speaking in a voice steady as steel, explaining that bullying was not strength, that humiliation was not entertainment, and that respect was something she would earn, but also demand, with or without their approval. And as she spoke, something unexpected happened. Students who had been laughing moments earlier now felt ashamed, realizing the woman they tried to break was far stronger than any of them had known. Brett, rubbing his wrist, stood frozen as she approached him, and though he expected punishment or fury, she simply looked at him with a depth that made him swallow hard, telling him that his behavior wasn't impressive, it was a sign of something broken that he didn't know how to fix, and if he wanted to continue acting like a leader, he needed to learn what real leadership looked like. The entire class sat in stunned silence as she dismissed them for break, and Brett remained seated, shoulders shaking slightly, not from pain, but from humiliation and fear and confusion, because for the first time in his life, someone had stopped him without violence, without shouting, without fear, someone who had stood tall even when he tried to tear her down. As the class emptied, whispers spreading through the halls like wildfire, Ms. Hayes quietly straightened her torn shirt and walked to the principal's office, not to complain, but to request sewing supplies, turning a moment of humiliation into a display of her dignity. By lunchtime, the entire school was buzzing with the story, and Brett, once the untouchable king of the hallways, found himself unable to meet anyone's eyes, replaying the moment over and over in his head, realizing that he had messed with someone far stronger than he ever imagined. When Ms. Hayes returned to class with her shirt neatly mended, Brett approached her, voice shaky, pride shattered, head lowered, and whispered the words no one ever expected from him, "I'm I'm sorry, please don't tell my parents, please. And in that moment, the classroom learned a lesson no textbook could ever teach. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who refuse to break, no matter how hard the world tries, and sometimes the ones who think they are wolves realize they've been acting like lost children all along. And as the day ended, and Ms. Hayes dismissed the class with calm authority, several students, once uninterested, once mocking, lingered behind just to say goodbye, feeling respect for her that she had earned not through fear, but through unshakable strength. By the time she walked out of the building that afternoon, the school felt different, quieter, wiser, and though she knew the days ahead would not be easy, she also knew the students would never forget the moment a group of bullies tore her shirt at roll call, and minutes later were begging for forgiveness. And for anyone watching this powerful story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more emotional, inspiring, and unforgettable stories that remind us that true strength always rises above cruelty.